I hope everybody smells minty fresh today for this live stream. It's very important to your health to smell fresh everywhere. Very important. Important. Welcome to the live podcast. Something I do for those of you new, I do a podcast every Friday that I sell on ScottTheTruckDriver.com. But, by popular demand, I do one of them for free here on YouTube once a month, usually the first part of the month. And, if you didn't get the smell reference, it's to the video I posted yesterday, which generated quite a bit of discussion on the subject, which is cool. But that's not really what I want to talk about today. Today I want to talk about some of the problems we have. But before I get into things, problems that you'll encounter, even if you're keto, if you're not doing certain things or if you're doing too much of certain things. Technicroto just super chatted. Let's say hi to everybody in the super chats here. Kim and chat. There we go. So Technicroto just super chatted. Thank you for contributing to my yeast infection fund. I need that in my life, I guess. So anyways, I want to welcome everybody that showed up for the kind of short notice live chat because I didn't really narrow a time down till this morning. So thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy days to come spend a couple hours with me, or just a few minutes. Some of you might have to cut out early or whatever, but this will be up for everybody to watch later. So I see a lot of this with you. It's usually new ketos. Now, a lot of you who are here are well aware of the problem with fructose and the problem with sugar. It's almost a no-brainer to most people who have been keto a while. There's still people that this is very new to. But there's also something I see from people who have been keto a while that I'm guilty of as well that can have a negative impact on health. And I went over this in a video, but I want to go a little further and apply some of the biochemistry which is almost identical to fructose in how you could be fucking your liver up still and still have insulin resistance, which can still lead to health problems. Now, granted, if you're keto and doing alcohol, for example, you're probably still healthier than a standard American dieter doing, alcohol and shit. So, I want to apply some of this stuff, and I also want to highlight some stuff I came across, some really good talks that were given that are kind of science heavy, a little bit on the boring-ish side, except for Dr. Lustig. He's always fucking entertainment. He even swears during them. It's pretty cool. One of the few doctors that's nice enough to swear. But I just wanted to kind of go through some of these clips and comment on them that I've pulled for today, and then we'll open up to the Q&A. It's hard for me to keep up with chat. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves. I will scroll back a little bit later to see if there's any good questions that are missed, but once I open it up to the Q&A, that'll be the time to try and grab my attention. There's a way I think you can tag my name or whatever if you want to highlight a question to me so that it catches my eye a little bit easier. Of course, Super Chat works too. But in all, I'm not able to pay attention to the chat and do my little spiel at the same time because I don't have that much multitasking ability and shit. So the first thing I wanted to kind of bring to your attention, and this is something that, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, about 16 hours, and I haven't gone through all of them yet. I've been working my way through them. Recently, there was, a conference called Jumpstart MD Weight of the Nation, which is in a room full of doctors and scientists and various other experts um, talking about science that supports, the problems we're having with obesity and metabolic disease and how we can use that information to reverse, cure, and prevent it. Now, the problem that you're going to run into, this is Jumpstart MD. You can search it on YouTube. I will put links after this shit's all loaded up. But I started going through some of these. You can see the ones with the little red outlines are ones that I've been watching. I just started this Stephen Finney one. I haven't finished that one yet. But these are very informative, and I would recommend whenever you're taking a shit, whenever you're driving, you can listen to these a lot. I mean, the slides are helpful, but you can kind of listen. Although when they get really sciencey, the slides do help to kind of keep you able to follow what's going on. But overall, it focuses on one thing. I do have a criticism because I'm mainly focusing on Dr. Lustig's things that he says. He starts out by telling us that he's not a low carber or a low fatter. He's a real food guy, and he has this big thing about fiber, which there's some things I disagree with him on that I hope he would focus more on. But for the majority of what he says, the thing that he demonizes most is fructose. But he kind of doesn't really push the alcohol angle too. And what I'm finding out here in the world, especially for myself, is alcohol's a thing, all right? Alcohol is abused almost as much as sugar and often at the same time as sugar. So, it's a matter of trying to figure out which is fucking us more at this point as adults. Obviously, kids that have fatty liver are straight up, it's sugar. But I see so many people ignoring their own personal health in favor of sugar and alcohol, which are very addictive substances in and of themselves. That's what happens when you're live and shit. And, they're kind of ignoring. Now, the vegans, they want you to believe that meat is a thing. So I want to start out with a little bit of good old-fashioned Nina Teicholz, ripping that shit to shreds. So let's give a quick listen to this shit right here from Nina about red meat and health, and comment on it a bit, because a lot of people like to blame insulin resistance, which is the root cause of a lot of this chronic disease, cause of obesity. It's the cause of a lot of issues. Obesity also being a symptom of metabolic syndrome. However, just because you're not obese doesn't mean you are safe health-wise, It's not all about looks or smells and shit. Let's see.
In epidemiology, confounding factors. So here's the thing about finding that red meat eaters are less healthy. There are all these other factors about people who eat red meat, lots of red meat, other than like the paleo people out there who are trying to be healthy. Most people who eat red meat,
or the fucking carnivores who are definitely trying to be healthy,
are people who 100% ignore their doctors over the last 50 years. Every doctor you go to will say, eat less red meat. So if you're the kind of guy who's like, yeah, doc, and then he goes out, and then you drink a bunch of beer, and whatever you're doing, you are not paying attention to orders. So red meat eaters are they're just less likely to.
And that's the thing. That's the problem with epidemiology that is thrown at you in the nutrition world, is they often ignore all of these factors. More physical inactivity, more cigarette smoking, more alcohol drinking, lower education, higher BMI, higher waist circumference. That's why I'm a big stickler on keeping my shit below half my height, which is 36 inches. Right now I'm a quarter of an inch over, and it hasn't, since I started pounding the Fuckmaster, that hasn't changed. Because I haven't done any significant fasting, first of all. I am bulking, so I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm trying to gain muscle, and I want to make sure I have everything I need for that to happen, and to provide an energy situation and a protein situation that allows that to happen. We'll get into that in the question mark shit. Thank you to Lush Papaya, who didn't write anything and just contributed. Thank you very much. I don't know what DKK is. It's 50 of it, whatever it is, but I don't know. We'll figure that out. I'll let YouTube do that math. But thank you once again for contributing. So, that's the problem with all of this red meat is bad bullshit that the fucking media is shoving down your throats in preparation for this big plant-based push that's going to come in the US guidelines. It's already hit the Canadian guidelines. It is popularized by fucking governments all over the world, and it's pretty ridiculous the amount of push there is behind this plant-based movement solely based on that epidemiology that is flawed, that does not take into account or isolate all of these other barriers. But she comments a little more, I believe, shortly. If it isn't, I'll stop playing it, but we'll see, about another flaw with this epidemiology.
They do any number of things that make them healthier. They tend to be fatter. They tend to have lower education, smoke more, drink more. So any one of those factors could explain why red meat eaters seem to be less healthy. We don't know. And epidemiology, you can never know, because epidemiology cannot measure all these things. They don't actually, they can't, if they measure them, they can't adjust for them properly. So if you want to see the full critique of epidemiology, and this is just such an important issue because it really
Okay, she did go over it at one point. I don't remember where. I didn't pull the clip for it. But one of the other flaws with these studies is they're based on questionnaires that you fill out, trying to remember not only what you ate yesterday, but what you ate the day before and the week before or 6 months ago, or what on average you eat. And that's almost impossible for everyone to remember food in that way. And some people are just likely to fill in blanks with whatever they think the questionnaire wants to hear. Because often these questionnaires do come with some form of compensation for taking the time to fill them out. So that's the other problem with this whole meat is bad push. But I don't want to focus so much on that. I do know that vegans tend to push the idea that red meat causes insulin resistance, and they will throw this epidemiology at you. But epidemiology is shit. I've said it again and again and again. Epidemiology is bullshit at this point. It can be manipulated to tell you either way on nutrition. It is not conclusive unless you have like a 5x increase in risk or whatever, which they're dealing in like 0.5s and 0.6s in risk ratio, and that's fucking ridiculous. All right, and then the fucking media jumps on it, grabs that headline, runs with it all over, and the next thing you know, you're learning that your vagina might smell on Women's Health or something. That's how all of this translates. Well, now that they're, I guess somebody told me that BuzzFeed's been picking from Reddit for a while, but now that we're starting to get our journalism to a point where just sourcing biased epidemiology isn't enough, we're going to pull from the anecdotal evidence on the internet any negative things that we can find. So I would expect going forward in the media space, you're going to see more and more people talking shit about the ketogenic diet based on shit that people are just saying on the internet, And I don't know how scientific that is. I advise people to take in that anecdotal data as a whole and figure out what the commonalities are. And if the majority of people you come across are saying the same issue that they've experienced personally, then yes, I would say you could probably make a decision based on anecdotal data. However, that's not what the media is doing. They're grabbing the stuff that fits their narratives from their paid advertising, and they're providing you with bullshit fucking articles that are designed to either scare you away from a diet or push you towards a certain way of eating. If you're doing the low-calorie, like Weight Watcher bullshit, eat less, move more stuff, they don't care about your fucking liver and how much fructose and alcohol you have. They don't really advise that much. They even tell you that that stuff's okay because it's all about calories in and calories out. And that is completely a dead theory at this point. I would say it's been disproven in so many fucking ways that calories in, calories out, cannot be accurately measured. And that I do believe Lustig goes over it. I don't know if I pulled that clip, but I welcome you to watch his entire presentation presentation, along with many of these others in the days to come, because it's 16 hours of your life that you really have to be dedicated to health. So I wanted to kind of highlight some things for people that just probably aren't going to fucking do that. Or maybe even generate enough interest where somebody who probably wouldn't sit through some of these lectures would check it out and shit. And I'm telling you, once you start digging into this stuff, you're going to have so many aha moments to where you're like, okay, that explains why this happened to me. And I want to get into a little bit with my results. But for the most part, this is stuff that you can use to make informed decisions that the media is just not going to provide you with. If I look at this, I assume they hosted this Jumpstart MD, and they're not getting a lot of views. They got 4,000 subscribers. This is what, by all means, a fringe small channel, and it's even smaller than me, and I'm pretty fucking small on YouTube. And, it's tragic that this information won't get out to the masses because it's not being pushed. Even by a lot of my fellow channels out here, I'm not seeing a lot of focus on this. There's a lot of clickbaity bullshit going on in the nutrition sphere that's hating on vegans. But that's not the way to bring people over or bring people into the way of eating. It's explaining some of this science that's out there, some of these things that professionals that are doing the research necessary, bring to the table that we're just missing out on because we're too busy saying your diet sucks, mine's better. There are some common things you can do on every diet to make it healthier. It's just a question of where you want to go in the health sphere and what you want to do in regards to your symptoms personally, which you may have different symptom goals than I do or anybody else. A lot of people are focused on weight, which is a symptom. Some of us are more focused on the health side and feeling good and having good energy and not being depressed. It depends on what your goals. Some of you have fitness goals. You want to pound the fuckmaster as efficiently as possible, which can change some of the things that you eat. These are all things that, you should take into consideration when weighing this stuff. But it's not like we don't know how the body works, and that's evident here. When you look at endocrinology, in terms of obesity and health and metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance, this is the area you want to study if you want to know how your body is processing what you put in your mouth. And I think that's something that people don't focus on enough. They focus on the epidemiology. They focus on the anecdotal without really studying the mechanics of it, the actual way your body works. And we have proven a lot of these things with indisputable experiments, direct experiments that have shown exactly how our body processes things, how it responds to different foods, how it responds to different calories. We know about de novo lipogenesis. We know about gluconeogenesis. We have studied the effects of what we eat on those systems. We have studied the effects of fructose on how it creates non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, how fatty liver comes to be through de novo lipogenesis. These are all things that we know about, but we're still looking to the epidemiology for our nutrition guidelines, which is, it's bullshit. And the reason is it's because this stuff gets shoved under the rug because these big companies will not profit from this information. There's no other way around it. It is about money, and we're getting our ass handed to us health-wise because of the money aspect. So, I'm checking in. Everything's working good, it looks like, and shit. So let's move on to the next clip. There we go. So one of the big things that I am alarmed about is most of the people I get to try, every once in a while I get a fairly normal body weight motherfucker or just a slightly overweight motherfucker to try this. If a lot of people won't even look at this shit, they won't even pay it any attention because they're normal body weight. And if you're a fan of Lustig at all, you'll have seen this slide before. But for those of you who may have missed out or haven't seen it, you can also apply alcohol into this equation, by the way. But let's take a look.
30% obese, BMI over 30, 70% normal weight, BMI under 30. Everyone in the room is in one of the two circles, and you know who you are.
I moved from this circle to this circle, which is pretty cool. And congratulations to those of you who have moved from this circle to this circle. But that does not mean you're out of the woods. That's something I want to hone in on, because there's things that I see a lot of ketos doing that I did myself that have proven detrimental to my own health, that I guess people overlook. They just figure I'm keto, I lost all this weight, I'm good to go. You may be, that may be fine, but you need to know that you're still only going so far. You might not have gone all the way. You might go far enough, though, to live to your 70s and not have a lot of issues. But you got to start, the older you get, the more you got to start thinking about these things, because they will catch up to you long term.
The standard mantra from the doctors and the dietitians and the Institute of Medicine and the National Institutes of Health and the Surgeon General and the White House and Congress and the food industry is 80% of these obese people, they're ill, they're metabolically ill. They get type 2 diabetes, hypertension, lipid problems, cardiovascular disease, cancer, dementia. It's these 57 million people. They're fat and they're sick because they're fat.
And also, that group is the only group that's going to seek out a ketogenic diet, unless they are so unhealthy, they hit the health wall so hard that it's destroyed their quality of life. A lot of times, you can fuck up your liver with fatty liver disease and already be pre-diabetic but not diagnosed. We'll get into that a little later. And have this insulin resistance issue, and have heart disease risk, and have stroke risk, and have all of these problems, blood pressure problems, and not become aware of it until you're in the hospital, all right? And I would argue that we need to, as a society, start promoting education and these kinds of things to get people on board in a preventative way. Right now, keto is very reactionary. You've been fucked up all these years. You've been obese. You've been in the hospital. You've been on diabetes medication. You had a stroke. You have high blood pressure. You had a heart attack. You have all of these fucking problems that you finally forced you to go out and say, okay, I need to fix this shit. And then they turn to keto and fasting for it. But there's a next line. There's a group of people next in line behind you that if you know a lot of your loved ones that are still doing this, and you look over at them and you're like, oh my God, they're on the same fucking course to what I just fucking went through. And you just want to shake them and go, what the fuck, motherfucker? Just fucking, can't you see what happens to you? And they don't want to hear it. And they don't even want to try it in some cases. Or they try it and they cave into their addiction right away, repeatedly or permanently. And that's something, that I hope that the media is not helping with this. They're busy talking about how you smell and, trying to poke holes in the diet wherever possible, along with all the weight loss companies and all the hamster wheel companies that want to keep you in the hamster wheel. Whereas if you go keto, you're likely to step outside of that hamster wheel. So, I want more of this normal weight group to be on this diet. And there's a reason, because there's more in this group that are sick than in this group.
And therefore, if they would only just diet and exercise, we could solve this problem. That's what they say. Bullshit. Why is it bullshit? Sorry, I'm from New York. I can't help it. Okay?
I love that he swore. I wonder if people are going to comment on that video and going, all right, I can't listen to this because you said bullshit.
Why is it
shit?
Bullshit? It's on the slide. Come on. It's on the slide. Well, it is true that 80% of 30% are metabolically ill. I don't argue that. That is true. But that means 20% are not. 20% are metabolically healthy. We have a name for them. MHO, metabolically healthy.
And some of you on keto may find yourself in this category. You got to keep in mind, we've been fucking up our liver a lot. And I contend ignoring fatty liver problems and insulin resistance for a long period of time in your life is going to kill off parts of your liver. It's going to exhaust your pancreas. You're going to run into problems. And the great thing is that keto can put a lot of these problems in a form of remission and keep you from further decline. but you might not necessarily bounce back to 100%, skinny, healthy, period. And it's going to be a little different based on how hard you were on yourself throughout your life. I was pretty hard on myself, and I'm feeling the results of that. There's parts of me that have not lost weight during this, mainly due to the fact that I didn't quit alcohol, which means I didn't heal my liver. I'm currently in the process of healing my liver, and I may have to stay alcohol free if I want to keep the benefits that I am noticing, which for those of you who aren't aware, I did quit drinking, I think 3 weeks ago. Was it 3 weeks? I don't know. I'd have to go back and figure it out. But I have noticed, and I am attributing to it, and I am going to test this theory. You see, I thought that because I had nuts in my diet, I was experiencing my mild depressions on keto. I haven't reintroduced those yet. But I have noticed that since I quit the alcohol, I've had a 0 depressive episodes. Nothing, is dragging me down at all. And one of the things I'm going to do to test that is I am going to reintroduce nuts into my ketovore style diet. Not every day, but occasionally I'd like to, indulge in my Veronica's Health Crunch fucking dessert that I used to have regularly, but now I'm going to do it a little more moderately and see how that goes. And if I see that my depression returns, or that any symptoms are resulting in that increase in fiber and plant toxins and stuff that comes with that, that will do for me is confirm that it was the alcohol causing me issues, causing the systemic inflammation, which can accompany a depressed system. Or was it the stuff from the nuts getting through my leaky gut and getting into my blood and causing inflammation, which can cause depression as well? So that's kind of where I'm at as far as the alcohol is concerned. But you got to keep in mind how prevalent is depression right now in our standard American diet. How prevalent are these mental health issues out there? And you can damn sure be, if alcohol is doing that to me and my depression, you can be damn certain that sugar is almost certainly causing our epidemic of depression that seems to encompass most of the people I know and most of the country and probably most of the world at this point. But that's science that has yet to be done. But you can self-experiment your way and figure out if these, the foods that are causing you the issue, just by eliminating them, bringing them back, eliminating, bringing them back. And if you notice the change in symptoms, the problem is you can't do it all at once, or you won't be able to narrow it down. So there's that. So let's go back to Lustig here and shit. I spent a while getting all my graphics back in order after the fucking the hard drive crash.
The obese, we study them to try to figure out how come they didn't get sick. Conversely, 40% of the normal weight population have the exact same diseases as do the obese. And
now he goes, I'm not going to play the whole clip, but he does go over this. If you look here, there's more thin sick people than fat sick people. And if you combine these two numbers, 1 in 3 Americans are sick. You can probably apply this to any country that is battling these diseases, that has adopted our standard American way of eating. And that's important. That means 1 in 3 motherfuckers are suffering from metabolic disease. And you see it all the time. You're surrounded by it. And it's just like smoking was back in the day. It took a lot of government intervention. A lot of laws were passed just to narrow that down, just to whittle it down. People still smoke. And I would argue those people don't give a shit about any of this, and won't until it's almost too late, until they hit that health wall. So, that's important to kind of keep in mind, I guess, as far as people that you're trying to convince that they need to do this. Because some people are obvious, they're overweight, they're obese, they're complaining all the time of health problems, and they want to lose weight, but they can't, they're struggling, and you offer the help, and then they see your results and go keto. But a normal weight person, 9 times out of 10, could not give a shit at all about your results. They're not going to say, well, that was good. I'm glad that you lost the weight. I'm going to go get me a fucking pizza and fucking have a 12-pack of beer, and then I'm going to go outside and smoke after that. But you're doing good. I like what you're doing. Why? They're enduring all kinds of symptoms, most of which they just put up with. And then eventually they're going to hit that health wall. It's almost a lottery on whether or not they are going to get this health wall like early in life, like in their late 40s, early 40s, late 50s, early 50s, 60s. We aren't supposed to die in our 60s, but it's almost common now. Celebrities are dropping like flies. It's pretty bad that we can't get through to people because we do not have the backing of media. We don't even have the backing of science because of the money issue. And it's fucking ridiculous that we're allowing this to happen. There's so much protest and outrage on so many things right now, yet this has gone completely under the radar. As keto awareness grows, it's still become more of a popular fad than an actual movement. And that's alarming that people are doing keto for the wrong reasons or without fully knowing how it works. They're just saying, my buddy went keto and lost fucking 60 pounds. I need to lose 60 pounds. I'm going to go keto. That's the wrong reason. The reason should be, my buddy just fucking got off his diabetes medication and his blood pressure normalized and his fucking blood lipids are great and mine are shit. Maybe I need to do what he's doing. You're not seeing that, are you? And a lot of new people that come into this are here for the weight loss. So they're not here for the obvious repair of our metabolism and of our symptoms. Now, there's a lot of debate going on, like, fiber versus non-fiber, and even Dr. Lustig is not keto. In fact, there's a couple speakers in this that are not keto, but they do cite a lot of the science being done by those in the low-carb sphere. As you saw, Dr. Finney's in the speaking list. So let's continue along the way with a few more clips. Let's see how we're doing on time here. I'm not entirely sure how long I've been up here. Been live for, I don't fucking know. Let's see here. How long have I been streaming? I started at what? So it's 4. Okay, I've been up for a half hour. We're doing all right on time. Let's check in with everybody and see real quick. Maybe do a few comments. Mike Toll, hey, I can't pronounce your name here. Sugar and carbs is the enemy, not meat. Fasting and keto make me feel good, but carbs and sugar are addictive. And that's a true story. And that's why I get so pissed off and triggered at the media for all of the crap that they put out that discourages people from even trying the diet. Because when you're addicted, you're grasping on every little thing to say, well, fuck this diet. And I see it all the time. And I see it with people I care about too, that try the diet. Some of them get miraculous results, and then they go back to their addictive ways. And it's hard to fight that. And as somebody who's battling addiction, myself, with the alcohol being one of the last substances, and I talk a lot about addiction transfer because I believe once you're at a certain level of addiction and that dopamine system is all jacked up from that addiction, that the only way to get off one addiction is to introduce another, like instead of going out and drinking your face off, maybe playing video games, or instead of, smoking, maybe go gambling. I don't know that, some people do both of those. There's all kinds of dopamine driven activities. Or maybe you go to the gym and get addicted to that. I might be getting there. I might be a little addicted to the gym thing now. I don't know how healthy it is. Probably going to break something. But, it's interesting how that goes. Let's see here. What else we got? Paul Smart. I've become more sensitive to nuts over my keto carnivore journey. Brazils are the only ones that don't make me feel bad now. So I assume that you've done the elimination style and tested it, and I want to do the same thing. I want to confirm that needs to be removed from my diet, and the only way I can do that is to bring it back in and see how bad it goes. Pretty much I've done this experiment with grain. Every time I bring grain into my diet, I fucking feel like complete shit. I bloat. I have autoimmune issues. It becomes nuts. I even break out in hives occasionally when I bring grain into the diet. See, when you remove the offending thing from your diet, you become more sensitive to it as well. And you can build a tolerance to these things to where they won't affect you as profoundly, but after you've been out of them a while, you'll find that you will run into an issue where, look, you eat sugar, you're gonna fucking have a big blood sugar spike. You eat carbs, you're gonna have a big fucking autoimmune illness reaction or inflammation as a result, or you're bloating. These are all things that your body gets used to not having that shit there, and it doesn't defend as efficiently against it as it did when you were exposing yourself on a regular basis. That's one of the ways people do strengthen themselves, is to expose themselves to whatever's fucking them up. So if you ever were to go back to being an unhealthy motherfucker and eating anything you want, you would obviously want to do it gradually and rebuild some of your ability to tolerate these foods. But your health is going to be destroyed in the process if you were to do that. I'm not looking to permanently reintroduce. The main reason I want to reintroduce, because I can get by without my nuts in my diet, I mainly want to do it to eliminate whether or not alcohol was the cause of my depressive issue. Because one of these two things it's narrowed down to. I've reintroduced the tomato sauce, which I don't feel good about because it does have glyphosate. I don't do that very often, but it's low carb. I do it every once in a while. I do Halo Top, which is mainly organic, but does contain about, I think 5 or 6 grams of sugar per serving. And, so I'm careful with that. I keep my carbs under ketogenic levels. Like on a day when I have that, or the rest of my diet's usually carnivore. And I've reintroduced these things with no health impacts, no negative consequences for the symptoms I personally don't want to deal with. And depression's the biggest one that I don't want to deal with. And anything I can do to prevent that, I try and do. So let's get back to Dr. Lustig here, and then we'll go back eventually to do some more Q&A, because I know you guys are a little curious how the Pounding the Fuckmaster thing's going. So there's that. And let's see here. There we go. So we're done with that clip, I think. Let's see what we got here.
Associated with this phenomenon called insulin resistance. The question is where and how and why. That's where we're going.
Yeah, insulin resistance is the root cause of why a lot of people are here, why we are dealing with these health problems, why they have not changed, at all. Even as we go more low-fat and double down and go more plant-based. That doesn't eliminate this problem, because you see the plant-based motherfuckers are on these fucking massive fruit smoothie shit and this whole, let's just eat all the fucking fruit out of season we can. I was watching, I want to kind of go off on a little tangent here. You see, this is why it's hard for me to get through a lot of clips. But, I've been watching, I'm a fan of Naked and Afraid. Why am I a fan of Naked and Afraid? Because that is putting somebody in the most extreme nature situation to where they have to find food to survive. And 9 times out of 10, when you watch that shit, they end up starving the entire time. Fasting, essentially. And if you notice, the obese and overweight ones tend to do a little better than the really skinny ones who go into it. And also, the meat eaters tend to do a lot better than the vegans who go into it, despite there being a lot of plants. The problem that they're running into is their plants aren't ripe, they're out of season. There was one guy I watched that tapped out because he ate fruit that wasn't ripe yet. And there's some kind of acid that forms in there. It's really informative from a survival perspective. It's one of the reasons I'm interested in survival is I want to know what nature wants us to do. I want to know the essential part. And most of the time, everyone on there is talking about getting protein and calories. Well, how are you going to do that in nature? You're going to eat animals because you're going to get the calories from the fat and the protein from the animals. You're not going to find nuts everywhere. And in some cases, even if you do find nuts, you're not getting enough calories out of them because you maybe get 5 of them because they're so high up and you can't fucking get to them. I mean, you got to keep in mind. And plus, those have a cycle of whether or not you can eat them. You can only eat them at certain times of the year or after they've fallen to the ground for a while. Fruits you can only eat when they're ripe. That's when the plant wants you to eat it. When the plant doesn't want you to eat it, it likes to chemically defend. But now we're in this environment where you're eating fruit all the time. Fructose is in fruit. And Lustig's come out in the past and said it's okay to eat fruit. And I agree. Seasonally, every once in a while, have a fucking piece of fruit. I don't think, I think you should go organic and local and in season if you're going to consume any fruit in your life. But that's not what's being preached out there. They want you to eat it all the time. They want you to go down to Walmart and get this tropical fruit, which is nowhere near where you fucking are, and eat that shit. And as you do that, you can still overwhelm your liver. It's not all Coca-Cola's fault. I can't tell you how many times I say, I didn't drink any soda today. And then they go and get themselves a big glass of orange juice. And I look at it and I'm like, you're literally doing the same shit. I hate to break it to you, but that shit's just as unhealthy for you as the Coca-Cola. You might get a little bit more vitamins and minerals with that, and that's great. You're going to need those because you're destroying your fucking liver, and you might need to heal a lot more. It is what it is. It's hard to tell people that fruit is not necessarily a health food. And if you look at the role in nature that fruit plays, it's to spread the seed of the plant. That's why it's sweet. That's why it's not poisonous to us when it's ripe. And it's seasonal. It only happens once, maybe twice a year, to where you go and get the fruit and you can eat it. And we used to do it in preparation for famine in winter. We would do this, gorge on fruit, knowing that we were going to put some fat on our bodies, which will help us endure long periods of time without food. And in that case, you are setting yourself up, you drop out of your ketosis while you're doing that, obviously. But if you majority of your time is being a fat burner and you store a bunch of fat with that fruit, you've essentially packed those calories away for later times. Unfortunately, we've fucked that all up. We're out of control with this shit. So you really, now you do have a tolerance. I will say this. Somebody wrote, Jenny Laurie just wrote, and I caught my eye. Totally agree about avoiding sweetness, even if it's 0 sugar. It kickstarts the hunger. And Lustig does go over that in this speech about how the biochemistry on why it does not affect your hunger. It doesn't even really spike your blood sugar. All it really does is get sucked into the liver and causes de novo lipogenesis, which is making of new fat. And that fat almost certainly ends up in your liver and your arteries and in organs that it doesn't belong. It doesn't necessarily make it to your fat cells. And that's because you're in this constant chronic inflammation state. You're also got this insulin resistance. It's almost systemic as your fat cells fill up. So the fat has nowhere to go after a while, and it accumulates in your visceral fat in your organs and causes metabolic syndrome, which can encompass diabetes, heart disease, obesity, high blood pressure, stroke, Alzheimer's. There's a lot of diseases that majority of which we're chronically suffering from at earlier and earlier times in our life that are caused by fructose and shit. So let's continue here a little bit and shit. I like how that sent me off.
So if you look here from 1970 to 2014 at a group of healthy Americans, oral glucose tolerance testing shows that euglycemia is maintained in healthy adult Americans.
And that's your blood sugar response. Whether or not you are going to go to your doctor and they're going to put you on fucking metformin is based largely on this. These are healthy individuals he's studying. So keep that in mind.
There's no change in the glucose.
And this is what they're measuring. Keep that in mind too.
Tolerance curve of healthy adult Americans in those 34 years. 44 years. I can't count today.
I did notice that Deborah wrote, exercise will make you insulin sensitive more quickly and put you into ketosis faster as well. Your muscles will be more sensitive, but your liver not so much. Not if you're not taking care of your liver. There's not much you can do about it. And an example of that is somebody who exercises and drinks a lot of alcohol, even though they're on keto, is still going to have an unhealthy liver situation and be prone to these metabolic diseases. So exercise isn't necessarily, the end-all be-all for this. I'm not saying don't exercise, I'm exercising myself now. I almost feel proud of myself and shit. But I will say that these people that he's talking about are those people that are healthy. They're going to the gym. They're physically active. They're ticking all the boxes of health. And if you look here at the insulin response and it's measured in time, 1970, this is a perfect insulin response. It's not taking as much insulin to keep their blood sugar in a normal range. I'm going to let him say it, and then I'll kind of explain it a little more.
But take a look at their insulin levels in order to maintain that glucose level. Here's 1970, and here's 2014 up here.
And this is where a couple of
2 to
years ago.
4-fold more insulin released for the same level of glucose. That's called insulin resistance.
Yep, and they are not. Your doctor isn't checking this when they do that glucose tolerance test. Or if they are, they're not telling you about it. Because if they saw this, even though your blood sugar and A1C look fucking great and you're not diabetic, if your doctor were to see this is an indicator that you're having to exhaust your pancreas and pump out shit tons more insulin just to keep your blood sugar at a healthy level. This is very damning, and I would contend 75% of Americans are falling into this range. If this is healthy motherfuckers, imagine the unhealthy motherfuckers that, the 1/3 of us that are fucked up right now are probably way up here, especially since it's 2019 and not 2014, and we haven't done jack shit to solve this issue. It's still all about blood sugar if you go to the doctors for diabetes, unless you're fortunate enough to have a doctor that's dealing with blood sugar and so on and so forth. It's alarming, and it's plain as day. We have this data, and we're not acting on it. No, we're too busy talking about how you smell downstairs and, whether or not red meat is the reason. When you have data like this that shows that healthy people are essentially pre-diabetic. You just can't see it in their blood sugar yet. Why? Because their pancreas hasn't taken his shit yet. So a lot of people who go on keto that are diabetic, they end up in this situation where they never recover their ability to cope with glucose, to cope with carbohydrates. And the reason for that is the longer you spend on this top line here, where you're having to do, I think it was 4 times more insulin to keep your blood sugar at a normal level, the longer you go like this, the more you burn out your pancreas's ability to pump out insulin in the first place. And then you start pumping out less insulin. And because of that insulin resistance, your blood sugar isn't going down. You're not able to pump out enough insulin to lower your blood sugar, and that's why a lot of diabetics who don't, who even on conventional treatments, they end up in the 3 to 4 until they have diabetic nephropathy, where your limbs start falling off and shit. It gets progressively worse because you're not addressing this, and there's currently nobody. You go into the doctor now and you leave with a good A1C that's within their range. and your blood sugar's in the 70s and 80s, you walk out of there with a big fucking boner saying, yes, I'm healthy, I'm not diabetic, I'm gonna go get me some fucking pasta and fucking soda and sugar and shit, and then I'm gonna go drink a fucking 12-pack of fucking craft beer, and then they fucking do all of that, and then 10 years later, their blood sugar fucking skyrockets. Or even worse, they have like a stroke or a heart attack or any of these other issues. Why? Because when they went in to get their physical, their doctor said, oh, everything looks good. Good job. We'll see you in 10 years when you need metformin and all these other drugs and statins and all this shit that we can make money on. And, just make sure and come back every year because we want to get you as soon as you get sick. It's ridiculous the way our system is set up.
And if you're impaired glucose tolerance, it's even worse.
Yeah, and then what he means by the impaired glucose tolerance means your pancreas is already failing, and it's not bringing your blood sugar down. And a lot of people that are diabetic on keto will notice that, especially in the early days, it'll take a while to get your blood sugar to normalize. I've seen a lot of diabetics who struggle in their blood sugar still jumps up to 120, especially if they've really been fucked up for a really long time. It's really hard to get them into the 80s and 90s. It took my mother, I think, probably 6 months to consistently hit the 90s, which I would argue is still pretty high in the blood sugar level. And then you got the dawn effect and all these issues where cortisol mobilizes glucose in the blood, and then you don't have enough fucking insulin, beta cells to pump out insulin to get that shit down. So it's pretty insane, that's why you have to keep this in mind. This is the ignored part of science, to keep you in that hamster wheel, to keep you eating that sugar and drinking that alcohol. Now, alcohol's been around a really long time, but so has fatty liver. Back in the 1800s, they used to just cut the liver out and be like, holy shit, look at the size of this fucking thing. This guy was fucking alcoholic to no end. Problem is now we're giving kids fructose, and it does the exact same thing to the liver. And when you see a kid with a soda, you know that kid is going to live a shorter life. Guaranteed, unless that kid rights the ship at some point in their life. We're not even teaching kids this. No, we're trying to push them to plant-based, which does not eliminate fructose from the diet. In fact, I would argue you eat more of it because you're keeping that low fat down. You've got to get your calories from somewhere. Well, guess what? They're going to get their calories from fucking organic cane sugar. That's my favorite ingredient of all time right there. So, yeah, we're not doing anything to cure anything yet, unless you do your own homework and research and figure this shit out for yourself. Your local practitioner isn't necessarily going to tell you to do any of this. Why? They're not allowed to for the most part. They got to follow their guidelines. So, what does it do? What does the fructose do? When it gets into your liver, it is only processed by your liver, much like alcohol, except alcohol is also processed by your brain. I do believe the kidneys also process fructose a little bit. Might explain kidney stones. But it kicks de novo lipogenesis into gear. And he does go over this a little bit. Let's play a little bit of this. This is more of how it piles up. And, because stress is designed to mobilize fat, which is this left side of this. And the problem is chronic stress activates this pathway, which promotes fat storage. Let's listen to a little bit of this and comment. But this is all a byproduct of de novo lipogenesis from overconsumption of fructose, and then a buildup of fat in the liver causing insulin resistance, and then your fat cells, depending on how your genetics are, will fill up to the point where the insulin has no way to go. And then eventually your pancreas burns out and you can't put out enough insulin, your blood sugars, there's all kinds of problems. When you fuck up your liver, even if you're on keto, you are essentially setting yourself up for this shit.
Neuropeptide Y.
He gets really sciencey. Sorry.
When
he is talking to a room full of experts, and I'm just an asshole. I don't even know half the shit that he's talking about.
Release norepi initially in response to an initial sympathetic outflow, you just get the norepi. But if you chronically stimulate, you end up with the neuropeptide and the neuropeptide Y. And the neuropeptide Y's job is to actually shut down the effects on the beta adrenergic receptor and actually end up leading to lipid storage and actually causing preadipocyte proliferation and adipocyte differentiation in order to put that energy somewhere else. So in other words, acute stress causes lipolysis. Chronic stress causes lipogenesis because of neuropeptide Y. And then there's this third problem. Here we have a guy who has metabolic syndrome to beat the band.
All right. So, yeah, if you want to watch more about the guy with lipodystrophy, there's a whole section he does on that. So, so basically, actually, let me see what this clip does real quick.
Big butt fat, you know, sub-Q fat, and big belly fat, visceral fat. Everybody had done that before. What they did, because they were cool, was they measured...
Yeah, this is the part I wanted to play.
Big belly fat, visceral fat, and big liver fat.
So they actually did a study where they checked the liver fat.
Got it? Visceral versus liver fat instead of sub-Q versus visceral fat. And what they showed was that when you looked at their insulin dynamics here on the y-axis, turned out that when you held the liver fat constant, the visceral fat contributed nothing to the pathology.
So that was kind of profound when I heard it. You know, I've always been concerned about visceral fat, but it turns out it's the liver fat that's the biggest offender, which meaning that you could still carry around some visceral fat without these negative metabolic consequences. So that's profound. Your liver is very important, and if you don't take care of it, even on keto, you still could run into problems. So if you've plateaued, if you still have health issues, if you're diabetic and you're still having a lot of problems with keeping your blood sugar under control, one place to look is your liver. Are you drinking your face off? I know people who are keto who still drink a lot more than your liver can handle, you know. Your liver can handle maybe 1, possibly 2 low alcohol drinks. I can tell you that wasn't what the fuck I was doing, and that's why I still have a lot of visceral fat and I still have a fatty liver, because I can actually see my liver pop out now that I've lost some of the weight. And it's one of the reasons I haven't been able to lose weight in that area, because I'm creating lots of this new liver fat, and it's staying there, and my body's going to it. My arms, legs, everything else is fine. But that area is a fucking mess. And it's a mess because I didn't quit the alcohol, which is essentially, when he's talking about fructose, you can interchange alcohol with that.
The visceral fat was along for the ride. It was the liver fat that made all the difference. The liver fat dictated the insulin dynamic problem.
And just to kind of paraphrase a little bit, I do recommend watching this more than once, especially if it's hard to follow some of the more science-heavy parts. You know, I want to emphasize that he's... It's hard to explain. Hold on. Let me play a little more.
Okay, liver fat is the problem. Where'd the liver fat come from? Well, that's over here in gray. Non-systemic fatty acids.
And now that non-systemic fatty acids he's talking about there is fat that is made within the liver. As in you ate it, the fructose, and your liver makes the fat. And it ends up right there. And at the same time, as, you know, he goes over later, I don't want to play all the clips because I'm kind of wanting to get to the Q&A. But he goes over a bit later that there was experiments on mice where they intentionally blocked their insulin receptors, simulating essentially having insulin resistance. And, you know, when you block the insulin receptor, you start all this destructive, process, that we've been going over with the blood sugar, and you're exhausting your pancreas and all of these issues, and that cause the sugar buildup in you to become diabetic and cause all of this inflammation and damage. When your liver is not insulin sensitive, and no, pounding the fuckmaster isn't going to fix this, especially if you're still insulting it with excessive cheat days of sugar or repeatedly drinking your face off while keto. These are all things that are going to keep you in this, you're healthier than the standard American diet. Don't get me wrong, because you are reducing your poison when you do that. You're obviously not eating a ton of fructose every fucking day if you're keto. But if you are drinking instead of that, you're really not pulling yourself all the way out of that mess. You're really not fixing all of that. No matter how much time you're in the gym, if every week you go to the fucking bar and tie one down, you're kind of just you're re-damaging the areas that you should be healing. You could make an argument long term whether or not you can kind of be in a better liver position and still have some alcohol, or spend some time without alcohol and then bring it back in, but then you're just re-damaging it. You're undoing your hard work in terms of becoming a healthier person. If you have the goal of having a high quality of life in your older years, then you need to start now in reducing your alcohol exposure or eliminating it, and getting sugar out of your life under 10 grams per day. That's it. That's 10 grams is your limit of fructose for the day. 10 grams of sugar, which I think that equals 5 grams of fructose. That's how much your liver can handle before it goes, oh shit. So that it's just something to keep in mind for long term. Let's really clip quickly. Okay, this is the rat experiments.
Lurco and the Nurco mouse. Okay.
Now they went through all these mice and they blocked insulin to these various organs in the body.
The Nurco mouse is another 2 hours. We don't have time for that today. So maybe someday Sean will invite me back and I'll talk to you about that. But today we're going to talk about the liver one, okay, the liver. So here's what insulin does in the liver, okay? Pancreas makes insulin. There are 2 pathways after insulin binds to its receptor.
This is how a normal motherfucker should work here.
The first is the phosphorylation of this 4-kit protein called FOXO1. When FOXO1 gets phosphorylated, it excludes it from the nucleus, and therefore prevents the transcription of gluconeogenic enzymes. This is therefore decreasing hepatic glucose output, thereby reducing total glucose in the blood.
So, which is important, if you're familiar with gluconeogenesis, that's where you convert protein and, amino acids and glycerol into glucose, essentially. So basically, one of the reasons the insulin spike is reducing your blood sugar is it's reducing gluconeogenesis, which is a constant process and it's demand driven. So when you're working normally, part of your blood sugar control is taking down gluconeogenesis because you're getting that glucose from the food you ate. When you bring a lot of fructose and you overwhelm your liver, that process is destroyed, essentially. And it leads to that vicious cycle of insulin resistance that spins out of control. And you have to pump out 4 times as much fucking insulin just to keep your blood sugar normal. And then eventually your pancreas says, fuck you, I'm done. And then you're fucked.
Keeping glucose levels normal. That's how insulin lowers glucose. Got it?
And it's sad that a lot of people in the nutrition field don't even pay attention to this mechanism. These hard and fast ways that your liver metabolizes things. They don't get into it. No, they're all about the fucking epidemiology. And I would argue the majority of my decisions have been based on how the body works, not epidemiology. Not even all the anecdotal evidence. I try and combine the anecdotal evidence with this and see what clicks, and that's what you should do too when you do your homework. It's matching what a lot of people experience on these diets with the actual biochemistry behind it. And endocrinology, which is the study of hormones, is a great place to learn this shit. Because they've been doing this a long time. They have a solid understanding of these mechanisms in the body and the enzymes involved in these pathways. I don't pretend to be an expert enough to tell you exactly what FOXO1 and SREBP1C and all of this other shit. I do know that TG is triglycerides. But, I couldn't tell you all of that before, but you can get an idea of the picture. Even when you're watching something, it's kind of hard to follow. You can see the big picture, and he's usually pretty good at connecting those dots. Sometimes he gets a little he forgets that there might be somebody who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Listen, but the purpose of these talks was for doctors and professionals, so that's why it's so science heavy. He does have speeches where it's more for the layman.
The second pathway is here, stimulating this transcription factor here called SRABP1C, sterol regulatory element binding protein 1C. This is the transcription factor that drives that phenomenon I just talked about, de novo lipogenesis. So when insulin meets a sensitive liver, you lower your glucose and you take your fat, you put it into triglyceride, you attach ApoB, and you export it out as serum triglyceride. And so it enters the bloodstream, and then insulin peripherally at the fat cell will clear it. And
that's the system we're fucking up, because insulin had two jobs here. One is to downregulate gluconeogenesis, and the other is to upregulate de novo lipogenesis. And my camera battery is about to fail. So I'm going to leave this play a little bit while I swap camera batteries. So let me put that up on the fucking screen. Yeah, that's what I happened. I need to get a way to plug this fucking camera in. Motherfucker. So we don't want that one. I'm going to let this play for a little bit while I swap batteries.
This is how you stay metabolically healthy but can put energy into fat cells. Got it? This, for lack of a better word, is good. Now, let's take that insulin receptor out of the liver. So the Lirco mouse. Okay? So now this animal only is missing the insulin receptor from the liver. Well, pancreas is making insulin great guns to beat the band, trying to make the liver do its job, but it can't because the insulin receptor is gone. So the FOXO1 doesn't get phosphorylated, and so gluconeogenic enzymes go sky high, and so you end up with hyperglycemia, diabetes. Fair. In addition, there's no insulin receptor to stimulate SRBP1C, so your triglyceride levels are low. High blood glucose, low triglycerides. Is that metabolic syndrome? It's diabetes, but is it metabolic syndrome? No. This is not metabolic syndrome. What is metabolic syndrome? Well, it's this. Here's insulin. You can't phosphorylate FOXO1, so glucose is high, diabetes, okay. But somehow, some way, through some mechanism, that SRBP1 is still going great guns because it's making triglyceride to beat the band, releasing that triglyceride, and so you end up with hypertriglyceridemia as well. Now, the 64...
All right, so as he's explained here, this is how it all fucks up. And it starts with your pancreas fucking kind of really failing. And this just spins out of control. And then you're making these fats. And then you're not putting out enough insulin to store them after they get exported out. And essentially, this cycle starts piling this fat up in your, liver. It piles it up in your visceral area around your organs. It ends up in your muscles, and it just starts spilling out all over your body. And that is essentially, the root of the problem of insulin resistance, and how fucking up your liver is going to do that. And I really beat the shit out of my liver. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of people have, because I see it all the time. When you work in a bar, you see people beating the shit out of their liver a lot, and there's no sign that they're going to do anything about it. And which is tragic, because a lot of the reason that they are doing this stuff is to cope with their quality of life, which in a lot of cases may be failing. So they go and they medicate this way. And having pulled myself back from that, and realizing my addictions and trying to reconcile them, I just want to share as I go that, the more you pull away from that, problem and these things that we do to destroy our health long term, the better you do feel, the increase in quality of life. I'm in the gym now and I want to go. Like, that wasn't always the case. And I can tell you, I think maybe quitting alcohol might have even been the catalyst that got me to become more fit, to try and work on that as a goal. Now granted, it's also part of my goals so that I can go out in nature and do this backpacking trips that are pretty. Yosemite's an aggressive backpacking trip. A lot of motherfuckers die on that trip. So that's one of the reasons I want to train for it. And it's, I could just keep going to the bar the rest of my life and drinking my face off, and not be able to do trips like Yosemite and get out in the woods and do these things and really just get in touch with nature, because we've lost touch with it in a lot of ways. And I would not be able to do that if I just kept pressing on with these unhealthy addictions I've had that have kept me from just really excelling at the things I really want to do and really get fulfillment out in life. This last summer, these trips, these backpacking trips, this wilderness fast, if you haven't watched that series, that's what I kind of go over when I'm talking in there about is how this is pulling me out of some of our most addictive, fucked up situations and giving me a break from all of the stress, all of the addictions that are fostered on us in our society now, and really giving my body and mind a break from these issues. And I couldn't do that if I kept drinking my face off every weekend, which I was doing, even though I was trying to be moderate, and sometimes I was able to keep it moderate, but moderate for me was still probably a little excessive for my liver. And, every once in a while I would just ignore my little limit and get shit-faced. And I can tell you my health declined dramatically. And it took me a while to recover from that, largely because I've probably destroyed a lot of my liver, to the point where I'm, it's not going to regenerate parts of it. And I'm aware of that. That doesn't mean I can't get rid of all that liver fat. That's been shown and proven to happen. And the only way you can get rid of this fatty liver is taking these offending things out. Now, he'll say repeatedly throughout his talks that the only way he gets rid of this stuff is to get rid of sugar, but he doesn't focus on alcohol. Now, here's my problem with Dr. Lustig. Dr. Lustig, he's very focused on this one issue, and I disagree with him on the fiber issue for obvious reasons. He cites that it feeds your gut bacteria. I believe that when you're a carnivore, you obviously still have gut bacteria, and it's a different profile of gut bacteria, and we don't really have enough science to support what a proper profile of gut bacteria is. But what I can tell you is so many people on a fiberless diet experience dramatic health improvements in things that they didn't even think would improve, like mental health, for example. It's a sign of inflammation going down, chronic inflammation going down anyway. Not to say that you don't occasionally get inflamed, and that's natural, and that's appropriate. Your body needs the ability to become inflamed periodically. Keeps you strong, keeps your immune system going. But I disagree with him on the fiber thing. I disagree with him on the all whole foods are good thing, because he hasn't. I really would hope he would dig a little bit into the glyphosate issue and the gut health a lot more than he has. He doesn't address leaky gut. He doesn't address these issues with some of these whole foods. And there's a lot of issues with our whole foods that he doesn't address. And I would, if by some chance he comes across this video, which I doubt, he's even aware of my little channel on the internets, because he's all caught up in with the other experts and shit, and they kind of like to toot each other's horns over and over again. But I would reason with him like, look, can you expand your knowledge beyond endocrinology a little bit? Because there's the gut microbiome is and he's touched on it, but I haven't seen him deep dive on it. And I think if he deep dove and started learning about leaky gut, glyphosate, how it, plant toxins, all of these chemicals that are sprayed all over our whole foods. It's not as simple as just going into Walmart and picking up everything that grew somewhere and saying, yeah, I'm healthy. That's not that simple for everyone. Some people can get away with that. And I would argue they're pretty much just tolerating certain symptoms at that point, and that's fine. If you can tolerate occasional depressions or occasional illness or occasional autoimmune problems or allergies or headaches or any of these other issues that can pop up, if you're happy and your diet's getting it done that way, then by all means, eat lots of that shit. But as more and more of us have experimented with carnivore, we're learning that you can take things out of the diet that probably weren't doing you much good in your diet. And once you've removed them for a while, you really start to feel better, and you don't feel these symptoms. And you notice that you don't feel the symptoms. So, yeah, I wish he would focus a little more on some of that. Let me see what this last... Okay. Here's the part where he acknowledges that fructose isn't the only offender, and it's really interesting, and I really did want to play this clip too. So let's take a quick listen here.
There are actually 4 items that are all metabolized the same way in the liver. Do the same thing with de novo lipogenesis. Trans fats do this, but we know that, and they're coming down. So that's not the answer anymore. Branched chain amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, valine, all essential amino acids. Protein powder, okay? Corn-fed beef, chicken, fish, high in branched chain amino acids. You guys are low carb USA. Branched chain amino acids also do this. Alcohol, but kids don't drink alcohol, but boy oh boy do they consume fructose. So what do these 4...
And you see how briefly he touched on alcohol? I found the branched chain amino acid thing... Because basically what he's saying there is if you're eating corn-fed or grain-fed or grain-finished beef, that you're getting more of these branched chain amino acids. That might be something to think about in terms of liver health going forward. Whereas if it's grass-finished beef, then you're probably not getting as many of these, or at least I would be interested in knowing a little bit more. I hope he gives a talk or some data based just on the branched chain amino acid part of the formula, because that's important. And I know vegans are going to seize on this as the meat causing that, but that doesn't make sense from a historical perspective. I would argue our agricultural issues, the things that he isn't addressing about the chemicals in our modern agriculture and in our meat, because glyphosate is in meat, that's a confounding variable, so to speak, in this mess, is glyphosate in the pollution of our food environment. That's something that can cause significant health issues that many people in the science community aren't really paying close attention to. Why? Because some other scientist who was a shill of Monsanto said, hey, it's perfectly safe. In fact, let's raise our limits that we're allowed to expose people. Meanwhile, some countries have woken up and banned the shit. And I wish here in the United States that we would, so I could feel better about eating whole foods. I don't know how much of the foods that I've cut out of my diet because of the symptoms they caused is due to the actual food and the plant lectins and all of that stuff and the oxalates, or is it because Monsanto's piss is all over it, or Bayer. And, that's a question I have to ask myself because I don't know. Because I have no way I can eliminate Monsanto piss from my food. Because it's even in organic food, thanks to our lovely water being polluted with this shit. So it's hard to tell. And, no one's really examining this aspect of it. And I think if he were to turn his attention to some of these things and maybe learn a little bit more outside the realm of endocrinology, and I think he does do some research outside of that, but I would like to see him tackle some of these questions on whether or not glyphosate plays a role in any of these. Now, obviously, vegetable oils, or trans fats. I contend that most vegetable fat is going to cause issues. And I notice I feel like shit every time I eat something that's cooked in vegetable oil. But the big two, and he's focused on fructose a lot, he even highlighted it here, even though he's trying to say he's not focused on it. Alcohol, obviously equal to fructose. So if you're drinking your face off, but you don't eat any sugar, you're really not doing your liver any favors. You're really just keeping the status quo in terms of your liver health. But because you're burning off a lot of fat in the process, I don't know, I would argue that the rest of your body, and this is how I found with myself, is the rest of my body, I lost a lot of fat. But the midsection has been consistent. I was able to bring the amount of inches around my belly button down below the visceral fat recommendation, which is half your height. The lowest I got it was 34 inches. It's 36.25, so I'm over right now. And, it's only been a few weeks since I quit drinking. I'm hoping in a month or so, plus the gym activity, even though I'm not trying to lose weight, and I'm not going to try to lose weight, maybe that's the issue, is I can't burn off that fat because I'm consuming it. But I do want to build a little bit of lean mass before I do my next cut and fast, which is coming. I will be doing some long water fasts just to trim off some of this body fat that I may be holding on to or building in the process of trying to build some muscle, get some gains and shit. Yeah, so.
4 foodstuffs have in common. Number 1, the liver's the only site for energy.
I know you guys want to hear it because I know it. A lot of people got a little triggered with that branched chain amino acid shit.
Regulation. Number 2, they're not insulin regulated. Number 3, there's no glycogen pop-off, and the mitochondria become overwhelmed. And that is what metabolic syndrome is. Mitochondrial overload in whatever tissue you're looking at. If it's in the kidney, you got kidney disease. If it's in the heart, you got heart disease. If it's in the liver, you got liver disease. Got it? That's what this is. I'll skip this for time. And there's no...
Yeah, and I'll skip the rest of this for time so we can get to some Q&A. Did I play that? I don't know. Okay, this is another speaker in there. So this guy goes a lot more into de novo lipogenesis, so I recommend Jean-Marc Schwartz's video. He's not as well-spoken and a little boring to listen to, but I'm still working my way through that one. But, the bottom line, you should watch all of these, And it looks like this channel's been around for a while, but they don't post very often. There's other interviews in here I'm noticing that I don't think I've seen. And I don't know if these are original to this channel or if someone else just kind of grabbed these from like Low Carb or something. It says that they're from Jumpstart MD's Way to the Nation 2018 conference. So I've not seen any of these speeches before, which is why I wanted to kind of show them to you. And it's nice to have them all in one spot to grab them. But there's not enough view on these, and there should be more. So I would start working your way through those if you want to make some more informed decisions about your health. And with that being said, I'm still not an expert. I'll give you guys a quick update while we get into if I can find it, while we get into the comments in the chat room and shit. And I'm going to scroll way up here in case I see anything cool to comment on. All right. I think I scrolled up far enough there. I kind of went over some of this already. All right. So, update with me. I've been going to the gym. I'm doing resistance training Tuesdays. Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays I do resistance. I do cardio also on Monday and Wednesday, and that's kind of my workout routine. My recovery has improved. Instead of being sore for 3 days, I'm now sore for 2. I worked out yesterday pretty hard, and I've got some soreness in some muscles that I probably didn't hit over the course of these past few weeks. But I am noticing that my arms are recovering faster, my shoulders are recovering faster. My back is still a little bit of an issue in terms of soreness in the muscles back there. My legs, I've been hitting, I did pretty much squats and deadlifts a lot heavily yesterday, so I'm feeling it in the legs a bit. but I hit the upper body muscles just as much, and I've already recovered. It's been 24 hours. So I'm noticing a dramatic improvement in recovery. I've not noticed an increase in strength necessarily, because I'm still kind of trying to find my footing with form and being able to hit all the muscles and that kind of stuff without really gauging my max, so to speak. I don't work out to muscle fair. I work out just till it's starting to struggle to get the bars up and get the weights going. I'm finding that I still get some benefit from doing that without going to muscle fair, whereas I used to just be all about I work out till the muscles don't work no more. And I don't know. And I am finding issues with the cardio side and keto in terms of high intensity, is in when I push for a strong interval, I generally hit a wall a little bit in terms of how hard I can push and for how long. And it's clear to me that I don't hydrate properly beforehand and get my electrolytes all lined up, because I have experienced occasional cramps during the cardio sessions. Ironically, not a lot of cramping going on during the strength training sessions, even though some of those can be quite intense. So I'm thinking muscles are pretty good at strength as far as pulling from ketones and fat for energy. But I'm not really, like I said, I'm not going to failure. And I'm not really lifting my max. I'm not going as heavy as possible, which I think is why I'm able to not hit a wall in terms of strength in ketones. So that's interesting. I'm actually getting better results being keto with resistance training, but high intensity cardio seems to be another matter. So that's interesting. I'll experiment a little bit with that going forward. I'm still at 202 pounds. I've still got the 36.25. I'm not losing any weight. I'm not gaining any weight, and I'm eating my fucking face off too. I intentionally push myself to eat 2 meals a day, even though I'm not hungry for one of them usually. I snack periodically. I try and keep because insulin does serve a very important role when you're building muscle. So I try and spike it a lot more often than I do when I'm not building muscle. So that's where I'm at. Let's take a look now at some of the comments. The ones I've scrolled back, so I'm probably not going to see right away what you guys are currently doing in the chat. So let's start going here. Reinventing my life. Wheel of Fortune guy is dying of cancer. Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of celebrities that are just they're not paying attention to this shit either, and they have to pay attention to the weight loss side, which is the irony of it. So they are doing eat less, move more, or even fasting in some cases. But fasting doesn't necessarily solve the problem if after the fast you're still beating the shit out of your liver and stuff. So it's sad that people who should live till ripe old age are suffering. We still got Arnold, though. He's still there. It's all that steak and eggs he ate all over the course of his bodybuilding. But I think he was a carb builder, and I think there might have been drugs involved there too. He's not a natural by any stretch. Let's see here. Irfan, yep. If I eat bread roasted, I feel like crap. Yep. I mean, that's one of the first things that keto learns in an elimination style diet is that when you try and cheat, you feel it. It has a profound negative impact. Why? Because you get used to not being exposed to that constantly, and your body kind of lowers its defenses a bit, which is a good thing. It's good because it discourages you from going back to that shit. But not to say you can't build up a tolerance to where you're putting up with those symptoms for a lot more easily, and that's how people end up in these multi-week fell off the diet modes. But it's an addiction, and addiction is a bitch. I think I need to try and address addiction a lot more on this channel, because it seems to be the number one thing that stands in the way of people sticking with keto. So Deborah writes, exercise is a good addiction. I don't know. It could be. I'm worried that I could break something or tear something or injure myself in such a way to cause me lots of problems, to cause me to not be able to do the things I want to do this summer. So I do have concerns that my old ass out there picking shit up and putting shit down might be bad. But I will say I do get a dopamine hit out of it. I have been. So it is an addictive thing. And I know just from being in the gym now that there's plenty of people addicted to being in there. But there's still a lot of people in there that hate every second of it. And you can see that they're miserable with it. And and they're trying to outrun a bad diet in a lot of cases, and spinning their wheels, and they might be able to burn through a lot of that fat, but they're not fixing the root cause that we kind of went over in detail today, and that's destroyed liver. They've destroyed the liver. Yeah, you can burn off all the visceral fat, and all of that. You can burn out all of these other fat areas except for that fatty liver in the gym. The only way you're going to get rid of that fatty liver is to quit making new fat, de novo lipogenesis. And in order to do that, you got to not drink alcohol, and you got to not eat sugar or fructose. So there's that. Jenny Laurie, diet is agreeing with you, Scott. You have a fresh look to you. I shaved my shit today and trimmed the beard, because I've decided to go with a more cultivated look. But thank you for the compliment. I wouldn't say my skin's spot on. I did have a little bit of a zit breakout at one point. Might have been some bad meat. Don't know. Inflammation can still happen. You're not immune to it when you're carnivore and keto, and the skin is often the first place that reacts when you become inflamed. So it's not to say that you can, on a carnivore diet or keto diet or ketovore diet, occasionally become inflamed from something. I do still spice my foods. I do still have some plant foods that may be causing inflammation in the process, which is why occasionally I do hit breakout. But at the same time, I'm not like filled with acne and having all of that issues. So I don't know. Especially since I always film in 4K and you can see every fucking blemish and pore on my shit. There's no makeup here. I'll tell you that. And because I don't give a shit enough to even care about how imperfect I look. It's not my concern. It's not what I live my life by and shit. Reinventing my life. Exercise helps with depression. I know some people who suffer from depression and are gym rats. And they're not really fixing their depression with it. So I guess I would argue it based on anecdotal data that no, I don't think so. And in the past, I've exercised. Like when I was in the military, they were eat less, move more, and my ass to death. And I was probably more depressed than I ever was in my life back then. Why? Because I didn't take care of my liver, that's for sure. I was that wake up in a field motherfucker when it came to alcohol, and I was drinking Mountain Dew and eating fast food every day, and I was not nice to my body. I'm amazed I made it to my 30s before I woke the fuck up and said, hey, you need to stop this shit. And that was as a truck driver. It was a pain in the ass to be healthy out on the road, even as a keto, when I eventually did go keto on the road. Dirty keto's a thing. So let's see here. Let's see. Mikhail Tua, well, I don't know your name. I have the knowledge, but why am I failing all the time? And Reinventing My Life told them to keep on doing it and trying and don't think fail. You're addicted. I've been there. Everyone in this chat room has probably experienced this when they first went keto. Fructose sugar is as addictive as cocaine, if not more so. There's experiments that have proven this in rats, but I think you can probably do the same experiment with humans, though it'd be a little unethical, by putting sugar on one side and cocaine on the other and then electrifying the floor. I don't know, maybe we would go for the cocaine, I don't know. But that being said, sugar is very drug-like in its addictive nature, as is grain. Opioid effects on your brain. So they're different types of addiction, and you're going to really grapple with them when you first go to this lifestyle and way of eating. I came from the path of fasting, trying to out-fast a bad diet. And all it did was make my hunger and binges and cravings a lot worse. It wasn't until I committed to keto that I started to recover from these things. And it can take a while to get over that addiction and craving, especially since your environment, your food environment is shit. You're surrounded by bad foods, you know. If other people live with you and you have to fucking be around them eating the shit all the time, you're going to cave in because you're addicted. It's like being a heroin addict in a room full of fucking heroin. I mean, you're probably going to relapse at some point. And, you know, that's a whole other issue, the whole drug problem that's out there. But you gotta, I don't know, you just gotta keep getting back on the horse and then start focusing on the health aspects, the things that you make you feel good, that make you feel, you know, better, and the things that you do that are positive in your life that you can't do if you keep eating that way. And the things that, and start coming up with goals that you want to achieve, other than just losing fucking weight. You know, maybe you want to do something like I do, like I want to fucking hike. I want to get out and backpack. And I can tell you, back in the days when I was on that standard American diet shit and pushing towards that 300-pound mark, that wasn't a realistic goal for me back then. And nor did I even have the energy or desire to do it. Since I've shifted this way, I've developed more of an energy, more of a willpower to exercise and be active and do all of that. Not that I'm saying going to the gym, because I still think that's boring as shit. I would much rather be fit out on the trail, but unfortunately the weather isn't cooperating right now. And I do know I need to start training, because when the weather does, right around the corner, start getting better, and I go out there, that, you know, some of my workouts are going to be out there, some of them are going to be in the gym, you know. And I also have been pretty much given 19 weeks of personal trainer, and I might as well take advantage of that and learn proper form and learn exercise routines for building muscle. So none of that would have happened if I wasn't unaddicted to sugar. And you also, when you're in the supermarket or when you see other people, you just kind of step on your soapbox a little bit inside your head, not necessarily to them, because they aren't going to listen to you. You got to kind of be like, look, I know that's not food. I know that's poison. I know that's bullshit. I shouldn't eat that. Every time I do that, something bad happens. I'm not doing that anymore. And start viewing the food in a negative light and being like, look, that fucking bread is complete crap. That sugary cookie baked good is shit. That cheesecake filled with 75 grams of sugar and it's 1,000 fucking calories is death. And when you start looking at it through that perspective, and it also helps to look at all the sick people around you and make that connection in your head to help you get away from these addictive foods. Be like, look, the reason that person is depressed is probably from this diet that I crave right now. I need to not keep in mind that I'm on that same road. I experienced that same depression and issues that they did, and they got better when I stopped doing that shit. So then you start focusing on that, and then you start desiring these healthy outcomes a hell of a lot more than you desire that sugary fucking high. You know, or that grain opioid-like effect that you get when you have a big bowl of pasta or a big chunk of bread. And that's how I have been able to not even look twice when I go into the store. Because you go into the store, it's 80% shit you can't eat. And I'm getting to the point now where it takes me 10 minutes to do a week's worth of grocery shopping just by walking in. I know all my little sections of the store where all the shit that I can eat is. I go straight there. I get my ribeye. I get my fucking cheese. I get my heavy cream. I do all that. Actually, I have to go somewhere else for my heavy cream because they got that emulsifier mixed in with a lot of their bullshit. So I look for organic shit. And we have a local dairy company here that does not put emulsifiers in their heavy cream. So I tend to go with their products as far as heavy cream goes. But that being said, I go out to my little sections of the store. I get my normal foods, and it's really easy to do when you're as limited in choices as I do. I would argue keto's probably a little bit more of a pain in the ass in terms of if you're one of those full vegetable berries, fruits, that kind of stuff in your keto diet, you're going to spend a lot more time looking around through the bullshit. But as I've simplified my diet to mostly carnivore, I will say it's really simplified my ability to adhere to the diet, simply because I don't even acknowledge the other shit. And when somebody's like throwing it in my face and they're like, "Oh, I'm eating pizza," I'm like, "Yeah, I'm watching you die slowly. Enjoy your impending health failure. But I'm not for me. Thank you very much." And another thing you can do is prepare for these. You're going to encounter the shit. It's not like you're going to go to a party and not realize there's going to be shit food there that's going to tempt you. Eat before you go. I do that all the time. I'll have a big fucking ribeye and be completely satisfied, full, and happy. And then go to a social event that I know that there's going to be bad, shitty fucking choices to be made there, but I won't want to make them, or I'm less likely to make them, simply because I arrived already satisfied, already full, already satiated. And that can help. So there's all these little tips you can do to really stop yourself from failing, and always strive to, when you get back on the horse, and that's the important part, is to not give up. You keep getting back on the horse and riding longer until you fall off again. You're going to fall off. It's part of the growing process with keto. You're going to have cheat days. You're going to have relapses. You're going to spend 3 weeks off the diet. The great thing about these moments is they're very good learning experiences, because you notice you regain every last pound very quickly. You feel like shit right away every time. You notice these negative symptoms and you're aware of them. And as long as you maintain that awareness and don't get complacent about it, you'll eventually get to a point where you don't cheat anymore. So, that's kind of where I sit with that. I see I got a super chat here. Let's see. I haven't really paid attention to the super chats. So, thank you, Chad, once again for sponsoring the channel. Get a ribeye on me, $18.99. Yeah, that's exactly how much an organic ribeye costs that I mentioned in my other video. I haven't checked the price today to see where it's at, but yeah. Well, thank you. I probably will get a ribeye. It's going to take a month and a half for YouTube to give me the money, so. In a month and a half, I'll have the ribeye from that super chat. But thanks once again. I know you've sponsored the channel pretty heavily over the course of me doing this. Let's see here. Let's see. Be proud of yourself. Paul Smart. Beer equals liquid bread. Now, one of the biggest things that prevents people from being keto, and I'm sad to say it, is when I tell them, you gotta give up the beer. And you do. And now I'm telling you, you gotta give up the alcohol to go all the way. Now, that's not to say that I didn't get good, positive results without giving up the alcohol. I got rid of the beer. I haven't had beer in 4 years, not even on a cheat day. So I'm good there. But I did spend a lot of time not giving up the alcohol, but I also did not get all the way to my goal, first of all, as far as circumference around the belly. That's an area I'm not happy with that I'm working on. I had depressive episodes while keto. I had autoimmune problems while on keto still. They were all more mild and not as profound as when I was on the standard American diet. So keeping in mind the spectrum of how far you want to take it, in terms of your nutrition, in terms of how healthy you want to actually be. Could I have kept the alcohol and probably not hit the health wall, at least till I was 70s or 80s? It could be. It's a gamble, given the amount of abuse I've put my body through and my liver through over the course of my life. It's probably a chance that's more likely to fail than succeed. And that's another thing to keep in mind. How much have you destroyed yourself over the years? It's a matter of your goals, your personal goals, how far you want to go on if you can eliminate alcohol altogether. But beer, that's got to go, because you're combining carbs with alcohol. and it's not going to help you because the alcohol is already jacking up your metabolic system. It's causing insulin resistance. And then the carbs are coming in and just adding to the problem. And, it'd be nice if we didn't fuck that system up and we could process those carbs properly. But unfortunately, when you destroy your liver, you destroy your ability to cope with a large carbohydrate load. And until you fix your liver, you should not carb load in my book. That might be a little controversial and shit. And then you add on all the fucking shitty glyphosate and all that other bullshit, and you just might as well avoid the shit. Because guess what? They found it in beer and they found it in wine. You can look that shit up. It's out there. Of course, nobody's going to tell you that from the government or the FDA could give a shit at this point. But it's in the beer. It's in the it's in the wine. I don't know if it was in the rum. Probably. Wouldn't surprise me. Alrighty. Honest as fuck wrote, I haven't had alcohol in 3 years. My family still gets offended when I don't drink with them. Oh, well. And I can tell you, you're going to have those friends that are going to be like, it doesn't help that most of my friends are from the bar I work at. I wouldn't say they get offended because this is probably my, third time quitting alcohol. So they're kind of used to it by now. And I did go a pretty long time, like 6 months at one point. And I don't know. I think I might be done permanently with alcohol just because of the amount of relief I've got. And then I haven't even had a mild depression since giving up the alcohol. And that's, I hope to test that theory out when I bring in the nuts to see if that causes me issues again. But if I narrow it down to alcohol, I'm done with alcohol because I would rather to not be depressed. And that is the key to giving up that addiction. Also replacing it with other addictions. I game a little more. I'm in the gym now. These are all things. And I'm about to be able to get back out in nature, which is another addiction of mine. And it's weird because it's a hardship that you put yourself through, but I'm addicted to that elation afterwards, that feeling of perseverance that you get when you battle nature and you don't die. Arguably, there's a chance I could die doing this stuff, but that's the risk of doing those activities, which I'm trying to prepare better for. So Jody wrote, Dr. Fung saved me from diabetes. A1C dropped from 6.9 to 5.4. I would imagine that that's a good thing. But if you kind of pay attention to what we're going over here, a lot of diabetes I wouldn't classify as cured, especially not from just fasting. It's more of your ability to cope with a glucose load, your insulin levels. And if your insulin levels are still high even when fasted, that's an issue. Or if your beta cells are wore out from the time you were diabetic, and you just can't tolerate a large glucose load because you can't pump out enough insulin to deal with it. So I would pay attention a little bit to your insulin levels because it's been my experience with everybody who has been diabetic that has done this diet that the moment they have a glucose load, their blood sugar skyrockets. And that's an indicator that their pancreas is wore out from spending a large... And as you've seen earlier, a great deal of time you spend with these, this insulin resistance system, this high insulin problem that you have, you aren't aware of it because you're still maintaining normal blood sugar. That's the problem that I have with the way our nutrition and doctors and healthcare system is set up, is they're not looking for this. And this should absolutely be looked for well over, the whole, what did I just do? I just hit a button and some weird shit happened. Is that normal? All right. You should be looking at this insulin level instead of just the blood sugar level. So eventually you're going to hit a wall. And I don't know, I would pay attention to that. So let's see here. What else we got here? Jenny Laurie, YouTube channels like Scott's and others are so helpful and thought-provoking. I just can't believe how much the medical industry and the government, health regulators did us wrong. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either, and it made me very angry. And that's why I speak out so much against it now. Is it's not changing. We're not even looking at it really. Now, some people are. Lustig obviously is campaigning for this shit, but he's pretty narrow focused on what he's campaigning against. But I would argue if we went completely whole foods, that's still a hell of a lot better. We'd be a hell of a lot better off than we are now. This is all things to consider in terms of what advice do you follow? Do you follow the advice that makes money off of treating your symptoms, or do you follow the advice of people who are having success and people that are asking the right questions and answering the right questions? I tend to lean towards these experts who are asking and answering the right questions, whereas the rest are just trying to prove that their way is the right way. Now, I would say that there's a fair amount of bias in the low-carb community, too. I've noticed it here and there in some of the things and studies that people present that are just pretty much confirming their own beliefs and not really focusing too hard on any opposing data. But in the end, like I said, that's where the wisdom of crowds comes into play and people's general overall experience with a certain way of eating and how you can pull these anecdotes together along with this scientific data and come up with your personal diet, not to mention doing an elimination style approach to where you can figure out how you get rid of certain symptoms. So there's that. How are we doing on time? So we're getting close to the 2-hour mark, but I'm going to keep going because I want to make sure I get to a lot of your questions here. Let's see. I'm not seeing a lot of people tagging a question directly at me. Chad wrote, branched chain amino acids, fatty liver, ARG. I had the same reaction when he said that. I'm like, could it make sense? I want to know more on that. I'm not saying he's wrong. I would just like to know where he's getting that. He's an endocrinologist, so he knows his shit. So he probably has some scientific data to support that being in the list. And he did specifically separate grass-fed from grain-fed beef when he made this statement. And obviously, if you're supplementing with branched-chain amino acids, you might want to consider that as well. Maybe that's the reason Sean Baker has some blood sugar problems. Maybe he has insulin resistance in the liver. His muscles might be insulin sensitive as fuck, but his liver might be a big insulin resistant piece of shit. I don't know. But it stands to reason as a bodybuilder, he probably, and a carnivore, he's getting plenty, and he advocates eating whatever kind of meat, not just organic. So maybe this is another argument for going organic over factory farm. But that being said, grain finished versus grass fed, even doing this is not going to fuck your liver up as much as the alcohol and fructose in any. You'd have to be, I would think you'd have to be at bodybuilder levels of protein and meat consumption to get to this. Most people don't consume a shit ton of meat. It's not a thing. Most ketos especially are more focused on fats. They get plenty of greens, and they have about that 20% protein intake. And I think if you're in the 20% protein intake, your dosage of branched chain amino acids is going to be within your liver's ability to tolerate them. That doesn't mean it doesn't stimulate de novo lipogenesis. Most of the food you eat, if you're not using it right then and there, does get stored either as glycogen or fat. So that's interesting. I'm hoping to hear a lot more data. If you're watching this and you know more about the branched chain amino acid thing and fatty liver, by all means, link it below. I'm sure you vegans are all over that right now. So put that shit in there. It's nice it's okay to question shit every now and then about your diet and make sure that everything's okay, because there might be some tweaking you got to do to deal with an issue if you're trying to get to that optimal health level. It's a question of that. So I think I'm all caught up to the comments here. So let's see here. JG Lee, from day one, I knew that success for Scott is his mastery over alcohol. The dude is smart if he can stay sober. And you're probably right. I probably need to stay sober. I agree 100% with that. Just based on my short-term results since I quit drinking, it's probably something I need to stick with, I think. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's little chat. I hope I gave you some food for thought, some things to research, some things to watch, to up your knowledge of things. And I want to thank those of you who contributed in the super chat. That does help me keep producing content and spending lots of time making videos. If you noticed, I did put out a decent amount of videos this week. And so I want to thank Technochrono, Lush Papaya, and Chad Metzger for your super chats today, which pretty much fund this free day of podcasts. But there are plenty of podcasts for you to listen to up on ScottTheTruckDriver.com. You can also go there and leave a tip in the virtual tip jar. It gets to me a little faster than super chats do. And you know, I'm also on Minds.com. It's my social media. I've been venting there a little bit more lately, so I am posting. I am pretty active on Minds still at this moment. I'm really enjoying the platform, and mainly because I'm so disenfranchised with the amount of triggered deplatforming going on almost every other social media platform. And that platform seems to be pretty free of any of that, so I'm pretty happy posting there, and I'm happy with some of the content that I'm getting to view there. There's obviously some things I don't agree with on there, but I don't think that means that those persons should not have the right to say their opinion. So check me out on Minds.com as Scott the Truck Driver. I mirror pretty much all my videos there, and anything I post off platform will end up there too as well. But ScottTheTruckDriver.com, my blog, will have all of this content available for your enjoyment. Wow, my stomach. I'm about, I'd say, almost 24 hours fasted. Yeah, I'm fasted right now. Which you might be like, why are you fasting? You're trying to build muscle. It turns out I really overate yesterday, and I'm just now getting to the point where I'm hungry. So I will be eating again before I go to work tonight. So there's that. Let me see. Anything else I want? Let me do one last check of the chat real quick. Let's see. I couldn't believe he does lifting shit up and putting shit down, JG Lee says. I can't believe it either. But I will film the shit eventually. Let me get used to everything again. Make sure all my muscles are working properly before I start sharing that experience with everybody. So thank you all for coming out for the live chat. Remember, I am not a fucking expert. I am just a fucking asshole and shit. Let me put that back on. Do your homework. This is, let me fucking go back over to that. This is a great amount of knowledge here that's being shared from a lot of the low carb scientists and doctors and journalists, and also some non low carb people, to keep everything in perspective. And I'm going to be working my way through this, and you'll probably see a lot of me responding and commenting on a lot of these lectures going forward, because I'm kind of focused on listening to these right now. So I want to kind of go through some of this. I didn't actually listen to David Ludwig. I fell asleep. I left it playing, and this played while I was sleeping. So I didn't actually watch Ludwig. I'm going to watch him. So, there's a lot of knowledge to be had, and it's not in obvious places. You're not going to find this on CNN or Women's Health or any of the other bullshit publications that claim to give a shit when all they give a shit about is their Weight Watchers fucking advertising and shit. So, There's stuff for you to watch when I'm not making shit. And they're a little smarter than me. They know about enzymes and shit. I don't. I just follow the little arrows and listen to the bottom line. That's all you really got to do, too, you know? And you'll still get a rudimentary understanding of how the body works at that point. So, I'm not an expert. I'm just a fucking asshole. Thank you to everyone who came out. Thank you to my supporters that have been financially contributing through ScottTheTruckDriver.com. I've even received my first Bitcoin donation. Still learning that system a bit. So thank you to all of you who continue to support my content production and going forward. Also head over to Scott the Photographer, because maybe it's not your thing, but maybe you just want to hear me talk shit about something else for a change, or maybe you need a break from nutrition. I don't know. Or maybe you need something to occupy your time since you gave up the alcohol. You know, it's a thing. Head over there and I can maybe share some of my knowledge of photography and creative endeavors and videography and adventures, and that kind of stuff is all going to be over there. Still going to have the wilderness fasts on this channel, though. And please like and subscribe and shit. And I think I've said all my going out shit. And let me see if one last check of the chat, because you guys did come out here. Deborah wrote, yes. Wait, she's responding to somebody. Jody. I don't see Jody's question. Yes, it is. It's very informative and easy to read. Well, it's so Slim's book. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. So, yeah. So, it's good to see you guys exchanging information and shit and really kind of being a community. That's the other great part of this YouTube channel is I have a good community so far, and I hope we keep it that way. Every once in a while, some shitty people do comment, but they don't stick around, it seems, and I would say the majority of you are definitely good. You provoke thoughts amongst each other. You challenge me from time to time to think about certain things, or you ask the right questions. So I'm very thankful for the community I have here, and I hope it stays to be a positive community as my channel grows. And it's slowly growing, slow and shit. So I'm going to go eat me a nice big ribeye, and then I'm going to go to work. And I hope you all have a nice fucking weekend. And I'll be cranking out some more videos next week. And hope to, if you enjoyed this 2-hour podcast, you'll also enjoy the other podcasts that you can get at ScottTheTruckDriver.com for just $5 a download. I'm going to stop selling shit now and end the show. Have a nice motherfucking day and shit.